I found a red thong in the trunk of his car. I didn't say anything. I just swapped his shampoo for industrial superglue. What happened next made the neighbors call the fire department and my own son, who worked there. If you're just starting to watch this story, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and comment which city you're watching from. Believe me, what I'm about to tell you today is a true story that changed my life forever. The kitchen wall clock showed exactly 3:42 in the morning when my eyes opened in the darkness. That clock, a gift from my mother when we married 20 years ago, had a peculiar tick-tock that I knew like the back of my hand. Just as I knew, or thought I knew, the man sleeping beside me. Richard was breathing heavily, exhaling that feminine perfume scent that wasn't mine, mixed with cheap whiskey that had become so frequent in recent months. His body turned to the opposite side of the bed, created an abyss between us, an abyss that grew day by day, week by week. 20 years of marriage reduced to two strangers sharing a king-size mattress that I had bought with such care when our bakery started making a profit. The necklace I had given him on our anniversary 3 months ago remained untouched in the dresser drawer. The blue velvet box still closed, betraying his complete disinterest in my gesture of love. Meanwhile, Richard came home later every day from the real estate agency, always with excuses about demanding clients and properties that needed to be visited after business hours. Our routine had become colder than bread dough left too long in the refrigerator. I would get up at 4, he would pretend to sleep. I would leave silently to open the bakery. He wouldn't even move. During the day, short, pragmatic messages. I'll be late. Don't wait up for dinner. Important meeting. At night, when he finally arrived, we barely exchanged words beyond the basics. Did you eat? Yes. Were the bills paid? Yes. Our son, Gabriel, now 23 years old and working as a firefighter at the neighborhood station, noticed the distance. "Mom, you two need to talk," he would say, while visiting me at the bakery on his days off. But how do you talk to someone who is no longer present, even when physically by your side? That specific early morning, while silence weighed between us like a 50-pound bag of flour, something inside me said our story had reached a point of no return. What I didn't imagine was how this point would reveal itself in the following hours, and how a simple bottle of shampoo would become the instrument of my revenge and my liberation. Richard's cell phone vibrated on the nightstand. Once, twice, 3 times. Normally, I would respect his privacy, but something at that moment, perhaps the different perfume that permeated his shirt thrown in the laundry basket, perhaps the lipstick marks on the collar he didn't even bother to hide anymore, made me reach out and grab the device. The locked screen showed 3 message notifications. The name that appeared made my stomach sink. Helena Real Estate. Helena wasn't the name of the real estate agency where Richard worked. His agency was called Campos and Associates. Who was Helena? Carefully, so as not to wake him, I slid out of bed. The cold floor against my bare feet sent a shiver up my spine. Or perhaps it was the premonition of what I was about to discover. I took the phone to the bathroom and closed the door before turning on the light. Obviously, the device was password protected. But after 20 years of marriage, I knew Richard better than he knew himself. I tried our wedding date. Nothing. I tried Gabriel's birth date. Nothing. Then, with a heavy heart, I tried the opening date of the bakery, the day that marked the beginning of our joint dream. The phone unlocked. Helena's messages were explicit. Today was wonderful. I can hardly wait to feel you again tomorrow. And then, have you decided when you're going to tell her about us and about the partnership proposal for the new real estate agency? And finally, don't forget to bring the bakery documents for the lawyer to analyze. We need to ensure that at least half stays with you after the divorce. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a conspiracy. Richard and this Helena weren't just having an affair, they were planning to leave me and take half of the bakery I built with the sweat of my brow, waking up before dawn every day for 2 decades. I returned to the bedroom in silence, placed the phone exactly where it was, and stood watching the man who once vowed to love me until death parted us. At that moment, something died inside me. Perhaps love. Perhaps naivete, and in its place was born something new, something cold and calculating that I never knew existed within me. That same morning, while Richard was still sleeping, I began my investigation. I got up as usual at 4 in the morning, but this time with a different purpose besides preparing the bread dough. Before leaving for the bakery, I silently searched his car. In the glove compartment, I found receipts from a motel in the neighboring town, just 30 minutes from our house. Luxury suite, 3 hours, $280. The date, yesterday. Check-in time, 3:45 p.m. A time when Richard should have been showing a house to a supposedly important client. I photographed everything with my cell phone, my fingers trembling with rage, but what really made my blood boil was what I found in the trunk. A red lace thong, size 8, carelessly thrown alongside a folder of documents. Upon opening the folder, my heart stopped. They were bakery papers, contracts, financial statements from recent months, asset evaluation, everything someone would need to prepare for a divorce process and division of assets. I returned home that night exhausted, not just from the hard work at the bakery, but from the pain that was corroding my soul. Richard was already home, something rare lately, taking a shower. His phone was on the living room table, and again I unlocked it. This time, I went straight to the location app and checked the history. As I suspected, the point marked at 4 p.m. wasn't the address of the house he said he was going to show clients, but the exact address of the motel from the receipts. I opened his email and found more evidence, an exchange of messages with a lawyer specializing in divorce and asset division. "We need to gather all the evidence that you invested in the bakery," the lawyer said. "Any deposit, any participation, everything can count in your favor in the division." The most painful were the photos, an entire folder in cloud storage, password protected, but which I guessed on the third try. There were Richard and Helena, a blonde woman about 10 years younger than me, with Botox inflated lips and clearly surgically enhanced breasts, photos of them together at dinners, on beaches, and some so intimate that they made my eyes burn with tears. I saved all the evidence. I took screenshots, emailed myself, transferred photos. Each piece of evidence was a new blow, but also a confirmation that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. The betrayal was real, documented, undeniable. It was while checking the last messages that I discovered something even more sordid. Richard and Helena weren't just planning to be together. They were planning to open a competing real estate agency using my bakery money as initial capital. "It will be perfect," wrote Helena. "You come in with the money from her bakery, I come in with my contacts, and in 6 months we dominate the real estate market in the region." That night, sitting alone in the kitchen while Richard snored in the bedroom, I made a decision. It wouldn't just be confronting him, it wouldn't just be a divorce. It would be a revenge worthy of the betrayal. And it would start with the item most precious to Richard after money, his appearance. "Mrs. Martha, are you sure about this?" asked Joachim, a gentleman in his 60s, former police officer and now private investigator, as he examined the photos and screenshots I had gathered. We were sitting at a table in the back of a diner 3 neighborhoods away from the bakery. It was my day off, Tuesday, the only day of the week when the bakery remained closed. "I'm sure of what I saw, Joachim, but I need more. I need irrefutable evidence that no judge can question." Joachim scratched his graying mustache, his experienced eyes going over the evidence once more. "You know this is going to hurt, right? Seeing with your own eyes. I've been feeling the pain for months. I just didn't know the reason. Now at least I can give it a name." In the following 2 weeks, Joachim did his job with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. He photographed Richard and Helena entering and leaving the same motel from the receipts I found. He recorded lunches at expensive restaurants where they caressed each other without any concern about being seen. He recorded conversations in which they openly discussed the plan to open the real estate agency with the bakery money. But the hardest blow came when Joachim showed me photos of Richard and Helena visiting a house. Not just any house, a mansion for sale in the best gated community in the city. "They've been there 3 times in the last week," Joachim informed me, handing me the photos. "And from what I could hear when they approached the car, they're planning to make an offer as soon as the bakery money is in their hands." The photos showed Richard and Helena holding hands, admiring the huge pool of the mansion. In one of them, he embraced her from behind, kissing her neck while pointing to the outdoor kitchen area. In the next, they were passionately kissing at the entrance of the house, as if they were already the owners. "There's one more thing, Mrs. Martha," said Joachim hesitantly. "I found this." He handed me a photograph of a document. It was a preliminary purchase and sale contract, with Richard and Helena's names as buyers. The value, $2.8 million, more than the total value of the bakery, even in a generous assessment. How do they intend to pay for this? I asked, feeling the blood boil in my veins. Well, I managed to record a conversation between them and the realtor. Joachim took a small recorder from his pocket. I think you should hear it. He pressed the play button, and the voices filled the silence between us. So, as we discussed, it would be 30% down payment and the rest financed over 20 years, said a male voice I didn't recognize, probably the realtor. The down payment won't be a problem, replied Richard, his voice so familiar and now so repugnant to me. We're finalizing the separation of assets from a family business. My share should be around $900,000, more than enough for the down payment. Perfect, continued the realtor. And regarding income verification for financing? It was Helena who answered, her honey-sweet voice causing me nausea. We're opening a real estate agency together. With the contacts I have and Richard's experience, our projected earnings for the first year are already enough to approve the financing. And when do you plan to finalize the purchase? Asked the realtor. As soon as his divorce goes through, Helena replied without hesitation. The idiot still doesn't know anything. She thinks he's working late every day. The laughter that followed burned my soul like acid. Joachim turned off the recorder, his eyes full of compassion. I'm sorry, Mrs. Martha. I sat in silence for several minutes, tears silently streaming down my face. They weren't tears of sadness, but of a deep, cold anger that was growing inside me like yeast in dough. Thank you, Joachim, I finally said, wiping my face. Can you get one more thing for me? Whatever you need. I want to know if they have a pattern, specific days, times. I want to know when I can expect them to be together in my house, using my shower, my bed. Joachim hesitated. Are you thinking of... Just get me that information. Leave the rest to me. A week later, I had everything I needed. Richard and Helena did indeed have a pattern. On Thursdays, the day I normally closed the bakery later for the weekly accounting, they would meet at our house. The house I built with the money from my work, the house where I raised my son, the house that was now defiled by betrayal. The pain I felt seeing Joachim's images, Richard leading Helena by the hand to our bedroom, the two of them coming out of my bathroom wrapped in my towel, sharing champagne in the glasses I received as a wedding gift, was like nothing I had ever experienced. It was as if each image was a knife plunged directly into my heart, but the pain soon gave way to determination. The revenge wouldn't just be sweet, it would be cinematic. The recording that Joachim obtained from the lawyer's office was the last straw. Using sophisticated equipment, he captured a conversation that destroyed any remaining doubt about Richard's intentions. So, as agreed, we'll request 60% of the bakery, said the lawyer, a man with a deep voice whom I had never met. Why not 70%? Asked Richard. After all, it was my name we used to get the initial loan. Because she can prove she worked there all these years, the lawyer explained impatiently. But don't worry, 60% is more than enough for what you and your partner are planning. And the house? The house is in both names, so it will be 50-50. But if we play it right, we can argue that she has the bakery as a stable source of income, while you're starting a new business. That might give us an advantage in the negotiation. Perfect. The satisfaction in Richard's voice was palpable. And how long until we can liquidate everything? If she doesn't complicate things, 3 months. If she resists, it could take a year, maybe more. It depends on how much she's going to fight. She won't fight, Richard laughed, a sound that turned my stomach. Martha is a sentimental fool. When I tell her I don't love her anymore, she'll sign anything just to get it over with quickly. It was the last phrase that broke something fundamental inside me. Martha is a sentimental fool. 20 years of marriage reduced to that. The woman who woke up at 4 a.m. to make the bread that supported our family, who raised our son alone while he built his career, who gave up her own dreams to support his. A sentimental fool. The recording continued, with Richard and the lawyer discussing strategies to emotionally manipulate me during the divorce process. How they would use my attachment to the bakery against me, how they would make it seem like I was being irrational if I tried to fight for what was rightfully mine. And then came the most devastating part. And if she discovers about you and Helena before we file? Asked the lawyer. Richard laughed again. Impossible. She's so busy with that damn bakery that she barely has time to notice what happens under her own nose. Besides, if by some miracle she finds out, I'll deny everything. I'll say Helena is just an important client, that the photos are out of context. Martha will believe it because she wants to believe. As I said, a sentimental fool. Even so, I suggest discretion until we finalize the paperwork. The law doesn't consider infidelity as a relevant factor in asset division, but judges are human. If she manages to prove the betrayal and directly link it to an attempt to defraud in the patrimonial division, we could have problems. Don't worry, replied Richard. In 2 weeks at most, we'll have everything prepared. She'll never know what hit her. 2 weeks. They were planning to detonate my life in 2 weeks. Destroy everything I built, steal my livelihood, my security, my future, and they thought I wouldn't offer resistance, that I would just be a sentimental fool crying in corners while they divided the spoils of my life. The bakery that I built from scratch, waking up before dawn every day for 20 years, would be used to finance their new luxurious life. The mansion they planned to buy would be paid for with the sweat of my brow, with the calluses on my hands, with the nights of sleep lost to ensure the bread was fresh every morning. No, they didn't know who they were dealing with. The sentimental fool had just died, and in her place was born a woman determined not only to defend herself, but to do justice with her own hands. My plan began to take shape that same night. Sitting alone in the kitchen, while Richard sent messages to Helena, thinking I was absorbed in the television, I began to chart my strategy. First, I needed to ensure the evidence was secure. I transferred all photos, recordings, and documents to a flash drive that I hid at my sister Lucia's house, the only person besides Joachim who knew what was happening. I made digital copies in secret emails and cloud storage protected by passwords that Richard would never guess. Second, I needed to understand exactly when they would put the plan into action. According to the recording, it would be in 2 weeks, but I needed to know the exact day. For this, I began to act even more distant and absorbed in work, giving Richard the false security that I was completely in the dark. Honey, I need to go to Chicago on Thursday for a real estate convention, Richard said at breakfast 3 days later. I'll only be back Friday night. My heart raced. A 2-day convention was the perfect opportunity for them to finalize the divorce documents without raising suspicions. All right, I replied, keeping my eyes fixed on the newspaper. I'll take advantage of it to do a complete inventory of the bakery. I'm thinking of expanding, Maybe open a branch in the mall. I saw from the corner of my eye how he almost choked on his coffee. The idea of another bakery would complicate his plans to take over the one that already existed. Do you think that's a good idea? He asked, trying to sound casual. The costs of a store in the mall are high, and the economy isn't so favorable. Oh, but I'm sure it will work out, I replied with a sweet smile. After all, our assets are solid, aren't they? You always say we should invest to grow? He nodded, visibly uncomfortable. Of course. But maybe we should talk more about this when I get back from the convention. Certainly, dear. When he left for work, I immediately called Joachim. Thursday, I informed him, he's going to Chicago for a convention. I need you to confirm if Helena is also traveling on the same dates. Less than 3 hours later, Joachim called me back. Helena just bought tickets to Chicago, same flights as your husband. Departure Thursday morning, return Friday night. It was all I needed to know. Their plan was in motion, and mine would also begin. On Wednesday, the day before the trip, I made sure to prepare a special dinner for Richard. His favorite dish, expensive wine, even candles on the table. He seemed genuinely surprised and a bit suspicious. What's the occasion? He asked, serving himself more wine. Nothing special, I replied with a smile. I just thought it would be nice to have a moment together before your trip. You've been working so hard lately. He visibly relaxed, probably thinking I was completely fooled about his double life. After dinner, I suggested we take a shower together, something we hadn't done in months. To my non-surprise, he refused, claiming fatigue and the need to prepare documents for the convention. No problem, I said, keeping the smile. I'll take a quick shower then. Tomorrow, I need to wake up early for the bakery, as always. In the bathroom, with the door locked, I began to implement the first part of my plan. With rubber gloves on my hands to avoid leaving fingerprints or residue, I took Richard's favorite shampoo bottle an expensive imported product to strengthen hair and prevent baldness, one of his greatest vanities. Carefully, I emptied the contents down the drain and washed the bottle thoroughly. I dried it completely and then, with the same care, filled it with transparent industrial superglue that I had bought that afternoon. The consistency was similar enough to fool someone who would pick up the bottle distractedly in the shower. I closed the cap, cleaned any splashes, and placed the bottle exactly where it was before. But that was just the beginning. While Richard slept, I replaced his aftershave cream with a mixture I had prepared based on habanero peppers. The color and texture were practically identical, but the effect would be quite different from the refreshing sensation he was used to. I also discreetly installed small wireless cameras in the bathroom and bedroom that would transmit to my cell phone. Not to record intimate moments, I didn't have the stomach for that, but to document the exact moment when my revenge would materialize. The final touch was something more subtle. I swapped the lubricant I found in his travel bag for a nettle-based gel that I bought at an adult store. The saleswoman assured me the effect was intensely stimulating, a euphemism for the burning sensation they would both feel. The next morning, Richard left for his convention. He quickly kissed me on the cheek, without looking into my eyes, and left carrying the suitcase where the fake lubricant waited to play its part. Once alone, I called Gabriel, my son. "Son, I need to tell you something. I know you're on duty tomorrow at the fire station, and I need you to be prepared." "Prepared for what, Mom?" I took a deep breath and told him everything. The betrayals, the plans to steal my bakery, the fake trip to Chicago, and yes, my planned revenge. "Mom, you didn't do that," he said, clearly in shock. "I did, Gabriel, and I'm going further. Tomorrow, when they return, I'll be stuck at the bakery doing the monthly accounting. They'll come home, as they always do on Thursdays, to take advantage of my absence. And then, when they're in the shower—" "Mom, this is crazy. Crazy is what they're doing to me, Gabriel. Crazy is spending 20 years with someone and discovering that person is planning to steal everything from you." My son was silent for a few seconds. "What do you want me to do?" he finally asked. "I just want you to be aware. If there's a call to our house tomorrow night, I want you to be one of the people to respond. I want you to see with your own eyes the man your father really is." The next day, I followed my normal routine. I opened the bakery at 5 in the morning, served the regular customers, baked bread and cakes. At 4 in the afternoon, when I would normally close, I put up the "Close for Inventory" sign on the door and sent the employees home. I went to the back of the bakery, turned on my laptop, and accessed the cameras I had installed at home. Now, I just had to wait. At 6:17 in the evening, exactly as Joachim had predicted based on their behavior pattern, I heard the sound of the front door being opened through the camera. Richard and Helena entered the house, laughing and kissing avidly, without even the care to check if I might be home. He led her directly to our bedroom, throwing the travel bags on the hallway floor without any care. She began to unbutton his shirt while he slid the dress off her shoulders. "I'm dying to take a shower," said Helena, running her fingers through Richard's hair. That hotel in Chicago was horrible. The shower barely had any pressure. Richard smiled, kissing her neck. "Here you'll have the best shower of your life. This shower has plenty of pressure. If only they knew what was waiting for them in that bathroom." I watched as they entered my bathroom, the bathroom I cleaned every week, where a woman's toothbrushes that weren't mine now shared space with Richard's. They entered the shower together, and Richard, always vain, first grabbed his precious imported shampoo. He applied a generous amount to his hair, beginning to massage his scalp as he always did. Seconds later, his face went from a relaxed expression to one of confusion, then concern, and finally, absolute panic. "What's wrong?" asked Helena, still under the water jet. My hair. I can't," he stammered, trying to remove his hands from his head, but they seemed to be firmly glued. Helena tried to help, placing her hands over his, trying to separate them from the now hardened hair. "What the hell is this? It's sticking!" she screamed, realizing that now her own hands were stuck to his and to the hair. Panic set in instantly. Richard tried to pull his hands, but only succeeded in tearing out tufts of hair, screaming in pain. Helena tried to free herself, but the more she moved, the more entangled she became in the sticky mess. "It's superglue! It's superglue!" Richard shouted, understanding finally dawning. That bitch switched my shampoo for superglue. They both tried to get out of the shower, slipping and falling into the bathtub, now completely entangled with each other. the shower water still falling over them, not helping at all to dissolve the superglue that only hardened more with each second. "We need to call someone!" shouted Helena, now with part of her hair completely fused to Richard's chest. He tried to reach for the towel to cover them, but only managed to knock down the rack, making a crash that alerted the neighbors. Outside, in the building hallway, I heard later that the neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Clotilde, an 80-year-old lady with surprisingly sharp hearing, heard the screams and knocked on the door. "Richard! Richard! It's Mrs. Clotilde! Is everything all right in there?" Getting no response other than more screams, she did what any concerned person would do. She called the fire department. At the bakery, watching everything on the laptop, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The scene was bizarre, tragic, and comical all at once. Richard and Helena, naked, glued to each other by their hair and hands, desperately trying to cover themselves while slipping through the shower water that continued to fall. 15 minutes later, I heard the sirens. The living room camera showed 3 firefighters entering the apartment, following the screams to the bathroom. And among them, exactly as I had predicted, was Gabriel, my son. The expression on his face when he opened the bathroom door and saw his father, naked, glued by the hair to a woman who wasn't his mother, was something I'll never forget. Surprise, confusion, understanding, and finally a cold anger, very similar to what I myself felt when discovering the betrayal. "Dad?" said Gabriel, his voice mixing shock and contempt. "Gabriel?" "Son!" exclaimed Richard, his face red with shame and anger. "Your mother did this. She switched my shampoo for superglue." Gabriel looked at his father for a long moment before turning to his fellow firefighters. "Jose, Marcelo, we need acetone, mineral oil, and probably scissors. We have a severe case of domestic accidents." The oldest of the firefighters, Jose, looked at the scene with an expression that mixed amusement and professional disapproval. "Let me guess. The husband cheated on the wife, and she switched the shampoo for superglue?" "It's already the 3rd case this month," laughed Marcelo, the youngest firefighter. "But this is by far the most creative." The neighbors, attracted by the noise and sirens, began to gather at the apartment door. Mrs. Clotilde, with her characteristic curiosity, managed to peek over the shoulder of one of the firefighters and let out a scandalized scream. "Holy Mother of God! Richard Almeida! Is this how you respect the home you built with Martha? With that bleached hussy?" The news spread like wildfire among the neighbors. In minutes, the hallway was full of building residents all trying to get a glimpse of the scandal of the year. The firefighters worked for almost an hour to separate Richard and Helena. The process involved a lot of mineral oil, acetone, and, yes, cutting off a large part of both their hair. When they finally managed to separate them, Helena had a huge bald spot on the top of her head, and Richard looked like he had been through a battle with a drunk lawnmower. The most humiliating thing for them was the need to be taken to the hospital, covered only by towels, passing through the hallway full of neighbors who didn't bother to hide their judgment. One of them, Mr. Carlos from apartment 302, couldn't contain himself. "So that's why you always come back late, huh, Richard? While Martha is working like a dog in that bakery." At the hospital, the humiliation continued. The doctor who attended them, Dr. Laura, was a regular customer of my bakery and knew me well. "So, Mr. Almeida, explain again how this happened," she asked, examining the damage to Richard's scalp. "I already said. It was my wife. She switched my shampoo for superglue," exclaimed Richard, furious and humiliated. "Mrs. Martha? The same Mrs. Martha who wakes up at 4 a.m. every day to make the bread that feeds half the neighborhood?" Dr. Laura raised an eyebrow, incredulous. The same Mrs. Martha who donated 50 loaves for the hospital's Christmas campaign last year? Helena, sitting on the stretcher next to him with a protective cap covering the bald spot, let out an exasperated sigh. "Look, doctor, it doesn't matter who did this. Just help us treat this so we can leave." The doctor looked from Helena to Richard and then to Gabriel, who had accompanied his father to the hospital as part of his duty as a firefighter. "And you would be?" "Helena Ribeiro," she replied arrogantly. "I'm a colleague of Richard's." Gabriel couldn't contain himself. "Colleague? Is that what you call the mistress now, Dad?" The emergency room fell silent. Nurses and other patients openly looked at the drama unfolding. "Gabriel, this is not the place for," Richard began, but was interrupted by his son. "Not the place for what, Dad? For the truth? Everyone already knows. The neighbors, the firefighters, now the doctors and nurses. Just end this and admit you cheated on Mom and were planning to rob her. Gabriel! Richard shouted, trying to get up, but being prevented by the nurse who was applying a solution to remove the last residues of superglue from his scalp. But Gabriel wasn't finished. From the pocket of his uniform, he took out an envelope and threw it in his father's lap. Mom asked me to give you this. They're the divorce papers. She's already talked to her lawyer. Oh, and there's something you should know. The bakery was never in your name. The loan was made with her grandparents' house as collateral. You have no right to anything. Richard's face paled, while Helena's contorted into an expression of rage and despair. What do you mean he has no right to anything? She shouted. You guaranteed me we would have at least 60% of that damn bakery. Her words echoed through the emergency room, confirming for all present the conspiracy they were plotting. Richard, completely defeated, opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside, besides the divorce papers already filled out and signed by me, were copies of all the evidence I had gathered. Photos of them together, screenshots of the messages, motel receipts, and the recording of the conversation with the lawyer transcribed on paper. There was also a handwritten note. I hope the mansion of your dreams is worth it, Richard. P.S. The lubricant in your suitcase was also swapped. Enjoy the stimulating sensation. As if on cue, Helena began to furiously scratch her intimate parts, a side effect of the nettle in the fake lubricant they had used before showering. Richard, I'm on fire! What was in that lubricant? She shouted, attracting even more attention. Dr. Laura, professional as always, tried to maintain her composure but couldn't contain a small smile. It seems we have a case of contact dermatitis in the intimate regions. I'll prescribe an ointment, and I suggest you two take an allergy test before using any intimate products in the future. Gabriel at this point could no longer hold back his laughter. He went out to the hallway, where he could finally laugh openly. Some nurses joined him, the news of the scandal already spreading rapidly through the hospital corridors. Back in the emergency room, Richard finally seemed to understand the extent of what had happened. It wasn't just the physical humiliation, the destroyed hair, the skin irritation. It was the complete destruction of his plans, the public exposure of his betrayal, the loss of his son's respect, and the certainty that he wouldn't see a penny from the bakery he intended to use to finance his new life. Helena, realizing that the house of cards had collapsed, wasted no time abandoning ship. This is ridiculous, she shouted, pulling off the protective cap in anger. I'm not going to participate in this anymore. Richard, sort out your life. I'm out. She tried to leave the room with dignity, but the nettle's effect made her walk as if she were riding an invisible horse, provoking poorly contained laughter from the medical staff. The doctor finally released Richard after treating his severely damaged scalp and prescribing ointments for the skin irritations. He was practically bald now, with red spots spread across what remained of his once voluminous and well-groomed hair. Mr. Almeida, the nurse will apply this ointment to the affected areas and give you a prescription to continue the treatment at home, explained Dr. Laura, handing him the prescription. What Richard didn't know was that I had spoken with Lucia, my sister, who worked as a nursing technician at the same hospital. When he was directed to a private room for the medication application, it was Lucia who entered to attend him. "Hello, brother-in-law," she said with an icy smile. "I came to apply your ointment." Richard paled upon recognizing her. Lucia never liked him, always said he wasn't good enough for me. And now she was there, holding the tube of ointment that would be applied to his irritated scalp and the other affected areas. Can't you call another nurse?" he stammered. "Unfortunately, we're short-staffed today," replied Lucia, opening the ointment tube with barely disguised pleasure. "Now, please lie down and try to relax." What Richard didn't know, but would soon discover, was that Lucia had made a small substitution similar to mine. The anti-inflammatory ointment had been mixed with a generous amount of extra strong mustard. The initial relief would give way to a burning sensation that, while not dangerous, would be extremely uncomfortable. While applying the medication, Lucia made sure to make clear exactly what she thought of him. "You know, Richard, I always knew you were a scoundrel. From the day you met my sister, I saw how you looked at other women when you thought no one was watching. But I thought at least you had a sense of self-preservation. Cheating on a woman like Martha, the woman who supported you while you built your career. How naive of you." Richard squirmed, both from the speech and from the growing burning sensation that was beginning to spread across his scalp. Lucia continued, now applying the ointment to the other areas affected by the nettle, making Richard grit his teeth in pain and humiliation. And the most pathetic thing is that you really believed you could get the bakery. That bakery that my sister built with her own hands, waking up before dawn every day while you slept peacefully. You never understood, did you? Martha may seem sweet and understanding, but she's a force of nature when provoked. By this point, Richard was feeling the full effect of the mustard, but didn't dare complain, fearing that Lucia would reveal her little personal revenge to the medical staff. When Lucia finished, she handed him the tube of fake ointment and an additional copy of the divorce papers. Martha asked me to give you this in case Gabriel forgot. Oh, and your things are already packed. You can pick them up tomorrow at the building's front desk. The locks have already been changed, obviously. As Richard awkwardly dressed in the clothes borrowed from the hospital, his own clothes had been cut by the firefighters during the rescue. Lucia handed him one last thing, a small flash drive. And this is a copy of all the evidence we have against you and your mistress. Photos, videos, recordings, emails, everything. If you try to contest the divorce or claim anything from the bakery, this will be sent to all the real estate agents in the city, your current clients, and posted on social media. I'm sure your boss at the real estate agency would love to know how you use houses for sale for meetings with your mistress. Richard took the flash drive with trembling hands, finally understanding the magnitude of his defeat. When he finally left the hospital, it was almost midnight. He had nowhere to go. His cell phone had been damaged by the shower water. He was practically bald, with skin burning because of the fake ointment, and he knew he had lost not only his wife and the respect of his son, but also any chance of getting his hands on the bakery he planned to use to finance his dreams of grandeur. Helena had disappeared, obviously not wanting anything more to do with a man who had not only been publicly exposed, but who also could not deliver the fortune he had promised. Meanwhile, I was at home, preparing a cup of tea in the kitchen he would never step into again. When the intercom rang and the doorman announced that Richard was downstairs wanting to come up, I calmly replied, "Tell him he can only pick up his things tomorrow," as agreed. And if he insists, remind him that I have a flash drive with many interesting stories that the other residents would love to hear. That night, I slept alone in the king-size bed, but for the first time in months, I slept deeply, without waking up in the middle of the night with a heavy heart. The betrayal hurt, yes, but the revenge had been sweet. Almost as sweet as the croissants I would bake the next morning for the customers who kept my bakery alive all these years. 3 months passed since the night I switched Richard's shampoo for superglue, and my life changed completely. For the better. The bakery, which had always been profitable, flourished even more after I was able to focus entirely on it, without the constant worry of a failed marriage weighing on my shoulders. I hired 2 new employees, renovated the space, and, yes, opened that branch in the mall that I had mentioned to Richard as a provocation. Gabriel, my son, began to visit the bakery more frequently. Our relationship, always strong, became even closer after he witnessed his father's betrayal firsthand. "Mom, I still can't believe you did that," he commented one Sunday while helping me close the bakery. But I have to admit, it was brilliant. I smiled, wiping flour from my hands on my apron. "I'm not proud of having resorted to revenge, son, but after discovering everything your father was planning, something inside me just broke." Gabriel nodded, understanding. "He would have taken everything from you if he could. Not just your money, but your dignity, too. You just gave him a taste of his own medicine." As for Richard, the news that reached me wasn't the best. For him, of course. Helena disappeared with what little money he had saved. The real estate agency where he worked fired him after discovering he was using properties for sale for romantic encounters. Some important clients withdrew their properties from the company's portfolio when they heard the story. The last time I heard about him, he was living in a tiny apartment on the outskirts of the city and working as a freelance agent, without the glamour or salary he had before. His hair, always a source of pride, never grew back properly in the areas most affected by the superglue. Mrs. Clotilde, the gossipy neighbor who called the firefighters that fateful night, became one of my most loyal customers. Every morning she would appear at the bakery to buy bread, and of course update everyone on the latest developments of the shampoo case, as it became known in the neighborhood. "Martha, you don't know what they're saying out there," she would comment, leaning over the counter. That Helena is now with a businessman from Chicago. Seems like she jumped from the sinking ship straight to a yacht. I would just smile and offer her a freshly baked croissant on the house. The gossip no longer interested me. I had a life to rebuild, and I was doing it masterfully. The divorce was finalized in record time, thanks to the irrefutable evidence I presented and Richard's refusal to contest anything, fearing the even greater exposure I promised if he tried. As Lucia had informed him, he took nothing beyond clothes and personal items. The bakery expanded to 3 locations in less than a year. Now I had a competent team that allowed me to delegate responsibilities and, for the first time in 20 years, take a vacation. It was during those vacations, on a quiet beach in Florida, that I met George, a retired university literature professor who loved naturally fermented bread and had eyes that smiled when he talked about books. Our relationship grew slowly, unhurriedly, built on mutual respect and genuine admiration. He didn't care about my assets. He had his own, and found my passion for artisanal baking fascinating. I loved listening to his stories about great authors and how literature had the power to transform lives. On a particularly hot afternoon, as we walked along the beach, George asked about the famous shampoo case. The story had spread so much that even he, who lived in another city, had heard about it. "Is it true that you switched your ex-husband's shampoo for superglue?" he asked, with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. I smiled, looking at the horizon. "It's true. It wasn't my most noble moment, but it was fair," he completed, squeezing my hand. "He was planning to take everything from you. You just showed him that messing with a hard-working baker means risking getting your fingers stuck in the dough." We laughed together, and at that moment, I realized that revenge, although it had been sweet, wasn't what really freed me. What freed me was the courage to stand up for what was rightfully mine, to not accept being treated as disposable after 20 years of dedication, and mainly to believe that I deserved something better. Today, when I look back, I no longer see the sentimental fool that Richard described to the lawyer. I see a woman who was always strong, even when she didn't know it. A woman who built a thriving business with her own hands, raised a wonderful son, and finally found the happiness she deserved. And it all started with a bottle of shampoo and a crazy idea that came to me in a sleepless dawn. Who would have thought that superglue, made to permanently bond objects together, would be what finally freed me from a marriage that had been broken for a long time? And that was my story. If you've made it this far, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and comment which city you're watching from. Also share in the comments if you've ever had to deal with infidelity and how you overcame it. And don't miss the 2 videos appearing on the screen now. Stories as intense as mine that will make you rethink everything you know about relationships. Until the next video.